Did you really think no one would find out? Principal Peterson stared at me over his reading glasses, his hands folded on the desk while the police officer next to him jangled handcuffs. Drugs at school, Eric. In your backpack. I was sitting in the hard plastic chair in the principal's office at Roosevelt High, trying to process how the hell 2 small bags of marijuana had appeared in the secret compartment of my backpack. The same compartment where I kept my diabetes supplies and a few $20 bills for emergencies. The door opened and my aunt and uncle walked in. Uncle Mark in his perfectly pressed lawyer's suit, Aunt Linda with that studied look of disappointment she always wore when she wanted to look like the victim. Behind them, my cousin Tyler leaned against the wall, arms crossed, that half-smile on his face I'd known since childhood. "We came as soon as we heard," Aunt Linda said, her voice breaking dramatically. "We're as shocked as you are." My name is Eric, I'm 17, and at that moment I realized that my own family had just handed me over to the wolves. It wasn't the first time Tyler had sabotaged me, but this time he had crossed a line with no turning back. I grew up in my aunt and uncle's house after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12. Mark and Linda took me in, but it was always clear who was their real son and who was the addition to the family. Tyler was 3 years older, captain of the football team, the kind of golden boy who never did anything wrong. At least not when anyone was looking. The drugs were hidden in the bottom of his backpack, the principal continued, pointing to the plastic bags on the table. An anonymous student alerted us during lunch. Anonymous student. Sure. I looked over at Tyler, who was examining his fingernails as if the whole situation was just a minor inconvenience in his afternoon. He didn't even bother to feign surprise when the principal mentioned the drugs. In fact, he looked almost bored. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell," Officer Johnson addressed my aunt and uncle, "we need you to confirm some information about Eric's recent behavior at home. Have there been any changes in his sleeping patterns, appetite, questionable friendships?" My aunt sighed dramatically. "Well, he's been very secretive lately. He spends hours locked in his room, leaves the house without saying where he's going. Just yesterday we found cash hidden in his drawer." Cash. The money I'd saved up from mowing lawns on the weekends to buy a used car. Money they knew perfectly well where it came from, because Linda gave me a ride to work every Saturday. But now, in front of the principal and the police officer, those $20 were evidence of suspicious activity. What about his grades? Uncle Mark added, adjusting his tie. "They've dropped a lot this semester. Maybe he's getting involved with the wrong crowd." My grades had dropped because I was working 16 hours a week to save money, in addition to taking care of the house while they were away on business. But they forgot to mention that part. Tyler finally spoke, his voice heavy with feigned concern. "I've tried to talk to him a few times, you know? As his older cousin. But he just gets defensive, says it's none of my business." He shook his head sadly. "I hope this is a wake-up call for him." His performance was perfect. Genuine concern mixed with brotherly disappointment. If I hadn't known that he had planted those drugs in my backpack during gym class when I left it in the locker room, even I would have believed him. Officer Johnson jotted down a few notes. "Would you be willing to put these statements in writing?" "Of course," Uncle Mark replied without hesitation. "We want to help Eric get through this difficult phase." Difficult phase. As if I were a rebellious teenager going through a crisis, and not an innocent person being deliberately framed by his own family. As they signed the papers, I sat there watching how easily they constructed a narrative where I was the problem. But they didn't know one important thing. Tyler may have thought he was smart planting the drugs in my backpack, but he forgot one crucial detail about me. I've always been paranoid about my belongings. Especially after a few pranks of his that resulted in my things being broken or lost. So 3 months ago, I installed a small GPS tracker in my backpack. Not just for location, but a model with a motion sensor that sent notifications to my cell phone whenever someone touched it when I wasn't there. And that technology had recorded exactly when, where, and for how long Tyler had touched my backpack today. If you're following this story of family betrayal and want to see how the truth always comes out, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the ending. While Officer Johnson explained the next steps and my uncles agreed to everything with solemn expressions, I already knew exactly how this story was going to end. Tyler had made the fatal mistake of underestimating the person he was trying to destroy. And in a few hours, when the data from the tracker was analyzed, everyone in that room would find out who was really lying. Tyler had always been the golden child my uncles never had to raise, only show-off. 3 years older than me, captain of the football team, that poster boy smile that opened doors and melted mothers' hearts all over Roosevelt High. But I knew the real Tyler. The Tyler who broke my science projects by accident the day before they were due. The Tyler who deleted my work files from the computer and then blamed it on a virus. The Tyler who told his parents distorted versions of events, where I always came out looking like the problem child. The difference was that when Tyler did something wrong, it was just a teenage phase or male energy that needs to be channeled. When I did anything remotely questionable, it was worrisome behavior patterns, and a reflection of unprocessed trauma from the loss of my parents. They had diagnoses ready for each of us. Tyler figured out early on that he could use me as a scapegoat for his own mistakes. In 8th grade, when they found marijuana in his school locker, he simply said he was saving it for me, that I was going through a difficult time because of the anniversary of my parents' death. The teachers believed him because Tyler never caused any trouble. I was the one always in the principal's office for antisocial behavior or adjustment issues. What no one realized was that my antisocial behavior consisted of avoiding Tyler and his friends. My adjustment problem was not being able to pretend that our family was normal. But Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda preferred to believe that the problem was my emotional instability, not the obvious favoritism they practiced. 3 weeks ago, Tyler had come home visibly high. Red eyes, slow movements, that characteristic smell permeating his clothes. Aunt Linda just said he looked tired from practice and told him to get some rest. That same week, when I arrived 10 minutes late from work because the bus broke down, she interrogated me for 40 minutes about where I had been, with whom, and what I had been doing. The system worked perfectly for Tyler. He could do anything because his parents always found a way to reinterpret or justify it. And if they couldn't justify it, they could always blame it on someone's bad influence, usually me. So when Officer Johnson asked about behavioral changes, Tyler already had the answer at the tip of his tongue. It wasn't improvisation, it was a script he had been rehearsing for years. Every word calculated to sound like genuine brotherly concern while constructing a psychological profile that incriminated me. I really tried to be a big brother to him, Tyler continued, his voice heavy with that performative sadness he had perfected. But whenever I offered advice or tried to include him in normal teenage activities, he became aggressive. He said I didn't understand his pain. Aggressive. The word he always used when I refused to be an accomplice to his schemes, or when I questioned the fantastical versions of events he told our parents. According to Tyler, I was aggressive when I wouldn't lend him money for drugs. I was aggressive when I refused to lie about where he was on nights when he disappeared from the house. I was aggressive when I refused to take the blame for the problems he created. Just yesterday, Tyler sighed dramatically, I offered to take him to the movies with my friends. Trying to include him, you know? But he yelled at me, said he didn't need my pity. It was really intense. Intense. Yesterday Tyler had asked me to lend him $50 for gas, knowing full well that I would find out later it was for drugs. When I refused, he said I was an ungrateful bastard who bit the hand that fed him. My response was that I would rather pay for my own food than finance his addictions. Apparently, that translated as yelling intensely. Principal Peterson took notes, clearly impressed by Tyler's maturity and concern. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda seemed proud of how eloquently their genuine son handled the delicate situation with their troubled stepson. I knew exactly when Tyler had planted the drugs. During third period, gym class, when I left my backpack in the locker room as I always did. Tyler had a free period then, something about being assistant coach for the team. In reality, he just skipped class and wandered the halls, but Coach Miller covered for him because Tyler was his star football player. The GPS tracker in my backpack had registered movement at 10:17 a.m. duration, 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Enough time to open the secret compartment, insert the drugs, and close everything back up. Not enough time for any innocent explanation. But the GPS wasn't my only precaution. Tyler didn't know that after 3 years of suspicious accidents involving my belongings, I had developed some very useful paranoid habits. Like photographing the contents of my backpack every morning before I left the house. Like discreetly marking the exact position of every object inside. Today's photographs clearly showed that someone had tampered with a compartment I never used for anything other than storing emergency diabetes supplies. The drugs were in a place where I would never put anything, positioned so that they would be easy to find for someone who knew exactly where to look. Eric has always been a difficult boy, Aunt Linda continued, her voice taking on that tone of suffering martyr she used when she wanted to sound like a misunderstood saint. Since he got here, we've tried to give him all the love and structure we can, but the trauma of losing his parents has created some trust issues. Trust issues. As if my reluctance to accept lies as truth was some kind of psychological pathology. As if questioning inconsistent versions of events was a symptom of disorder, not a sign of functioning intelligence. We've consulted therapists, Uncle Mark added, adjusting his tie with that pretentious gesture he made when he wanted to impress someone. They've all said it's normal to have an adjustment period, but frankly, after 5 years, we expected more progress. 5 years of trying to adapt to a system where I was perpetually the problem, never the solution. 5 years of being gaslight every time I pointed out inconsistencies or injustices. 5 years of hearing that my perception of reality was distorted by trauma, while watching Tyler be shielded from any real consequences for his actions. Officer Johnson closed his notepad. Well, based on the physical evidence and family reports, we need to process Eric according to standard protocol for possession of controlled substances on school grounds. Tyler finally showed genuine emotion, a quick flash of satisfaction that he tried to disguise as concern. But I knew that look. It was the same one he made when he got to blame me for something he had broken. As the officer explained the next steps, the police station, a call to our parents, a possible juvenile hearing, I mentally calculated how much evidence I would need to not only clear my name, but to completely expose the system of manipulation Tyler had built over the years. Because this time, he hadn't just planted drugs in my backpack. He had made the fatal mistake of underestimating my ability to document and prove the truth. And when the truth came out, it wouldn't just be about the drugs. It would be about years of systematic sabotage, psychological manipulation, and family complicity. Tyler thought he had just destroyed me. In fact, he had just given me all the tools I needed to destroy the carefully constructed illusion of who he really was. But first, I had to survive the process of being officially charged with a crime I didn't commit, defended by a family that knew perfectly well I was innocent. At the police station, while my fingerprints were being taken, Tyler posted a photo on Instagram. It was him hugging some of his football teammates with the caption, "Sometimes you have to make tough choices for family. Praying for my cousin Eric during this difficult time." 163 likes in 20 minutes. Tough choices for family. As if incriminating me was an act of sacrificial love, not a calculated move to protect his own skin. As if he was the brave cousin doing what needed to be done, not the coward who planted drugs in my backpack to avoid his own consequences. Officer Martinez, a middle-aged man with a gray mustache, explained the process to me as we filled out the paperwork. First offense of possession on school grounds meant a juvenile court hearing, possible community service, mandatory rehabilitation program. Your cousin did the right thing by reporting this, he said, stamping the documents. Sometimes family has to step in before things get worse. The right thing. Intervene. The words were carefully chosen to make Tyler sound like a reluctant hero, not a sociopathic manipulator. As Martinez talked about second chances and reintegration, I mentally calculated how many people Tyler had convinced he was saving my life by destroying it. Uncle Mark arrived to pick me up 2 hours later, his suit still impeccable, his expression carefully controlled. In the car, he turned the radio loud enough to discourage conversation but low enough that I could hear when he called Linda. "It's done," he said. "Eric has been charged. Now we need to focus on minimizing the impact on the family's reputation." Pause. Yes, Tyler is shaken, but he's handling it well. Showing a lot of maturity. Another pause. No, Eric hasn't said anything problematic. Still processing, I think. Processing. As if my mind had frozen in the face of the moral complexity of being betrayed by my own family, not as if I were calmly gathering evidence while they constructed their official version of events. When we got home, Tyler was in the living room watching television, his bare feet up on the coffee table as if it were any other Tuesday afternoon. He looked up when we came in, a studied look of concern on his face. "Eric," he said, his voice low and solemn. "Man, I know you must be mad at me, but I couldn't just stand by and watch you destroy yourself like this." Destroy. As if my A's and B's in school, my part-time job mowing lawns, my nightly study routine were signs of self-destruction. As if working to buy my own car was problematic behavior that required family intervention. "I understand," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Because arguing would be pointless and suspicious. Innocent people who are unjustly accused become confused and defensive. Guilty people try to control the narrative. I needed to appear to be the former. Tyler visibly relaxed at my calm response. I knew you would understand. It's hard now, but in the future you'll see that it was for your own good. For my own good. The phrase manipulators use when they want to appear selfless while serving their own interests. Tyler had perfected this language over the years, always framing his cruelty as care, his sabotage as protection. That night, while the whole house was asleep, I accessed the GPS tracker data on my laptop. The timeline was crystal clear, movement of 4 minutes and 32 seconds in my backpack at 10:17 a.m., exactly during the time Tyler claimed to be at the library studying for a history test. But the GPS didn't just show movement. It showed precise location. And at 10:17 a.m., my backpack wasn't at the library. It was in the boys' locker room, where Tyler had full access during his free period as assistant coach. I photographed the timeline and saved the data in 3 different locations. Then I accessed the school security cameras through the student portal, a feature few people knew existed, implemented after a few incidents of bullying the previous year. The system kept recordings for 90 days. And there it was, Tyler entering the locker room at 10:15, leaving at 10:21. 5.5 minutes. Enough time to plant drugs, check that they were well hidden, maybe even take a photo as proof for himself. I downloaded the video file. It was grainy, but unmistakable. Tyler, my backpack, perfect timing. Enough evidence to completely destroy the narrative he had built. But as I organized the evidence, something more disturbing crystallized. This wasn't the first time Tyler had sabotaged me like this. It was just the first time I had documentary evidence. The science project accidentally broken the night before it was due. The work file corrupted on my computer. The time I was suspended for cheating on a test using notes that mysteriously appeared in my desk. Always convenient coincidences. Always at the exact moment for maximum impact. Always with Tyler positioning himself as the concerned cousin trying to help me overcome my behavioral issues. It was a systematic pattern of gaslighting and sabotage that had been going on for years. And for the first time, I had the tools to prove not only his guilt in the current incident, but potentially expose his entire history of manipulation. At 3 in the morning, I finished organizing everything into an encrypted digital folder. GPS data, security camera screenshots, a detailed timeline, photographs of my backpack before and after. Enough evidence to not only clear my name, but to demonstrate premeditation and a criminal pattern. Tyler thought he had executed the perfect crime. In fact, he had documented his own guilt with forensic precision. But exposing everything right away would be a tactical mistake. Tyler was popular, charismatic, protected by his parents. I was the troubled cousin with a questionable history. If I presented the evidence too hastily, they would find ways to question, dismiss, or reinterpret it. Instead, I needed a more subtle strategy. I needed Tyler to hang himself with his own rope, document more lies, involve more people in his false version of events. The more elaborate his performance as the concerned cousin, the more devastating the fall would be when the truth emerged. As I closed my laptop, Tyler knocked lightly on my bedroom door. "Eric? Can I come in?" I opened the door. He was in his pajamas, his hair messy, his expression carefully vulnerable. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "I keep wondering if I did the right thing today. I know you hate me now." "I don't hate you," I replied, and it was true. Hate implied emotional passion. What I felt was something much colder and more calculated. "Thanks for saying that," Tyler sighed in relief. "I was afraid I'd lost my cousin forever." He hugged me. A long, tight, supposedly conciliatory hug. As his arms wrapped around me, I felt his phone vibrate in his pajama pocket. A text message at 3:30 in the morning. When he pulled away, his eyes glistened with perfectly timed manipulative tears. "We'll get through this together, okay? As a family." As a family. The words he would use to justify any future betrayal. The language that turned victims into accomplices in their own destruction. But this time would be different. This time, when Tyler woke up tomorrow and checked to see if I had swallowed his performance as a repentant cousin, he would discover that he had fundamentally underestimated who he was dealing with. The real game was just beginning. And unlike all the previous games, this time I controlled the board. Over the next 3 days, Tyler stepped up his performance as the devoted cousin. He offered me rides to school, asked about my feelings, even suggested we talk to a family therapist. To process all this together, he said, his eyes filled with fake compassion. It was a brilliant strategy. Every caring gesture built his image as the responsible older brother while positioning me as the traumatized cousin who needed help. The more he showed concern, the more people believed that I really had drug problems and that he was heroically trying to save me. On Thursday, Tyler posted a photo of us on Instagram, him with his arm around my shoulders, me looking visibly uncomfortable. The caption read, "Family is being there for each other in tough times. I will always support my cousin Eric on his journey to recovery." 472 likes. Dozens of comments praising his maturity and family loyalty. Recovery. As if I were an addict in rehab, not a victim of a premeditated crime. Tyler had turned my situation into an inspirational story about family overcoming adversity, with him as the patient mentor and me as the charity project. Meanwhile, I meticulously organized my evidence. The GPS data showed not only the exact moment the drugs were planted, but also a disturbing pattern. Tyler had visited my backpack 6 more times in the last 2 months. Always during periods when he claimed to be at the library or at extra practice. School security cameras confirmed each incursion. Tyler in the locker room during times when he should have been elsewhere. Tyler rummaging through my backpack with quick, furtive movements. Tyler checking the contents before planting the final drugs. It wasn't impulsive. It was systematic. A pattern of criminal behavior that had been going on for weeks, maybe months. Tyler had turned sabotaging my life into a long-term project, documenting every step without realizing he was creating forensic evidence of his own guilt. But the digital evidence was only part of the strategy. I needed to fully understand Tyler's motivations, the resources he used, the people involved in his protective network. Because exposing the drug incident alone would be a superficial victory. Tyler would come up with a new excuse, a new version of events, a new way to make me the villain of the story. So while he perfected his public performance as the devoted cousin, I began a discreet investigation into his recent activities. Inconsistent schedules, unexplained expenses, questionable friendships. Especially that friend with sunglasses who showed up at my house at odd hours. I discovered that Tyler owed money. A lot of money. $3,400 to a local drug dealer named Snake, who had a reputation for collecting debts creatively. Tyler had promised to pay him by Friday. Today was Thursday. The pieces fit together perfectly. Tyler wasn't just trying to frame me for family cruelty. He was trying to solve an urgent financial problem using my destruction as a distraction. If I were arrested for drug dealing, attention would be diverted from him. If I were expelled from school and sent to some rehabilitation program, the house would be free for his illicit activities. It was a doubly advantageous plan. It eliminated an inconvenient witness and created the perfect environment for his criminal operations. Tyler wasn't just a family manipulator. He was a criminal in progress who had calculated my elimination as the solution to multiple problems. Thursday night, Tyler knocked on my door again. This time he brought hot chocolate and an especially vulnerable expression. "Eric, can I talk to you about something personal?" I opened the door. He came in, sat on the edge of the bed, and sighed deeply. "I know you must be confused about all this. But I want you to know that making this decision was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life." The hardest thing. As if reporting a crime was a profound moral dilemma, not a selfish calculation to protect his own interests. Tyler had rehearsed this conversation, practiced every pause, every facial expression. "You're my cousin," he continued, his voice choked with manufactured emotion. "My brother, practically. Seeing you destroy yourself like this. I couldn't just stand by." Destroy yourself. Again, that language that turned victim into perpetrator, crime into necessary intervention. Tyler was a master at rewriting narratives to cast himself as the reluctant hero of situations he himself had created. "I understand," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Because confronting him would be pointless and suspicious. Innocent people who discover the truth are shocked, not calculating. I needed to continue looking confused and grateful for his help. Tyler relaxed visibly. "Thanks for being understanding. It means a lot." He hugged me again, that long manipulative hug he used to seal our emotional complicity. As his arms wrapped around me, I felt his phone vibrate again. 3 quick messages. At 10:43 p.m. Tyler pulled away quickly, checked his screen, his expression changing subtly. "I have to take care of something," he muttered, already heading for the door. "But Eric? Tomorrow we'll talk to my parents about next steps. We want to make sure you get all the help you need." Next steps. Help needed. Tyler was preparing phase 2 of his plan, convincing his parents to send me to a residential rehabilitation program, removing me completely from the home environment. House free, witness eliminated, problem solved. But while Tyler went downstairs to check his urgent midnight messages, I finished preparations for my own phase 2. Because if you're following this story of family manipulation and want to see how the truth can be more devastating than any lie, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow, when Tyler woke up expecting to convince me to check myself into rehab, he would discover that he had fundamentally underestimated who he was dealing with. And when Snake called demanding the $3,400, Tyler would finally understand what it meant to have no way out. The difference was that, unlike him, I wouldn't need to plant evidence or invent crimes. The truth would be enough. On Friday morning, I put my plan into motion. First step, an anonymous call to Principal Peterson, using a voice-altering app. "There's important information about the Eric Mitchell drug case that you need to know. Check the security cameras in the men's locker room, Tuesday, 10:15 a.m. I hung up before he could ask questions. Simple, direct, impossible to ignore. Peterson was too thorough not to investigate an anonymous tip about a case that was still open. Step 2, a text message to Snake. "Tyler Mitchell owes $340 more than he said. He lied about the amount. I have proof." I attached screenshots of Tyler's conversations with other dealers, where he mentioned the actual amount of the debt, $3,800, not $3,400. Tyler had underestimated me on every possible level, including my ability to hack into his phone using a simple social engineering technique I learned on YouTube 3 months ago, when I first became suspicious of his activities. Step 3. I personally visited 5 of the school football program's top sponsors. Local businessmen who loved being associated with athletic success, especially with upstanding young men like Tyler. I left a sealed envelope with each of them, containing printouts of Tyler's social media, compromising party photos, evidence of drug use. Along with a simple note, "Do you believe this is the kind of young man who represents your business values?" I didn't ask for anything. I didn't make any threats. I just presented the information and let them draw their own conclusions. At 9 in the morning, Tyler got the first call. Snake, demanding the additional $400 he had discovered on the debt. Tyler denied it, of course, but his voice was already tense when he answered the phone in the kitchen. At 9:30, Coach Miller called Tyler into an urgent meeting. 2 sponsors had called questioning the moral character of certain players. Tyler rushed out of the house, clearly nervous. At 10 o'clock, Principal Peterson called Uncle Mark. It was a short, professional conversation. "We need to review some evidence in your nephew's case. Could you come to the school this afternoon?" I watched everything from my room, monitoring hacked phones, social media, even Tyler's car audio system via Bluetooth, which he never remembered to disconnect. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each piece knocking over the next in a perfectly orchestrated sequence. Tyler came home at 11:30, visibly shaken. He found Aunt Linda in the kitchen, reading something on her tablet with a grim expression. "Tyler," she said without looking up, "we need to talk." She had discovered his Instagram. Not the carefully curated public posts, but the secondary account he thought no one knew about. The account where he posted photos of parties, drugs, comments about dumb people who believe anything. "Mom, I can explain," Tyler began, but Linda raised her hand to silence him. "Explain this," she said, turning the tablet toward him. On the screen was a photo of Tyler holding a bag of marijuana, with the caption, "When you need to plant evidence on your dumb cousin, but forget to take a picture first, huh?" The blood drained from Tyler's face. He had posted that photo on his secret account as a joke for his close friends, thinking he was being clever by admitting to the crime in a veiled way. In fact, he had created irrefutable digital evidence of his own guilt. "Tyler," Linda sighed, her voice laden with a disappointment I had never heard before. "What have you done?" Before he could answer, Snake appeared at the front door. He didn't knock. He just walked in, accompanied by 2 friends who looked professionally intimidating. Tyler! Snake yelled from the living room. We need to talk, buddy. Tyler stood frozen between his furious mother in the kitchen and the menacing drug dealer in the living room. For a few seconds, he just stood there, his head spinning between the two, realizing that his carefully constructed world was simultaneously collapsing on multiple fronts. That's when my phone rang. Principal Peterson. Eric, can you come to the school right now? We have some important updates about your case. Sure, I replied, loud enough for Tyler to hear. Be there in 20 minutes. Tyler looked at me for the first time since this whole thing started. He really looked at me. And for the first time in years, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not the performative fear he used to manipulate situations, but real terror from someone who finally understands that he has completely lost control. Eric, he whispered, we need to talk. Of course we do, I agreed, grabbing my car keys. But first, I'm going to handle this situation at school. After all, as you always say, family has to face the consequences of their actions. As I walked out the front door, I passed Snake and his friends. Snake looked at me curiously, then with recognition. Are you the cousin who sent that information? He asked. I just wanted to make sure you had all the facts, I replied calmly. Snake smiled, a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. I appreciate honesty. There should be more people like you in the world. When I got into the car, Tyler was running after me. Eric, wait. But I was already driving. In the rearview mirror, I saw Tyler standing in the driveway, Snake and his friends approaching him, Aunt Linda coming out of the house to see what was going on. Tyler's carefully constructed empire had taken 3 years to build. It was taking 3 hours to completely collapse. As I drove to school, my phone rang again. Text message from Tyler, please don't do this. I can explain everything. We can work this out as a family. I replied, you're right. Let's work this out exactly as a family should, with complete honesty. When I arrived at the Roosevelt High parking lot, there were 2 police cars waiting. Principal Peterson was at the main entrance, standing next to Officer Martinez and a woman I recognized as the county prosecutor. Tyler had thought that destroying my life would be as simple as planting drugs and making up stories. He found out he was playing chess with someone who had been 10 moves ahead the whole time. The difference was that while he played to destroy, I had played to reveal the truth. And the truth, when it finally emerges, has the power to rebuild everything that has been corrupted. The Roosevelt High conference room was packed when I walked in. Principal Peterson, Officer Martinez, the county prosecutor, my uncles Mark and Linda, and Tyler, who looked like he had run straight from his meeting with Snake, sweat still beading on his forehead. Eric, Principal Peterson began, we apologize for the miscarriage of justice that has occurred. After reviewing the security footage, it is clear that you were the victim of a premeditated crime. He turned on his laptop and projected the video onto the wall. Tyler walking into the locker room. Tyler rummaging through my backpack. Tyler planting the drugs. Precise timestamp, 10:17 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Tyler turned white as a sheet. That doesn't prove anything. I was just. Just what? The prosecutor interrupted, opening a thick folder. We also have GPS records from Eric's backpack, showing his exact movements during his free period. We have his social media posts admitting to the crime. We have evidence of debts to local drug dealers, establishing motive. Uncle Mark finally spoke, his voice heavy with a disappointment I had never heard before. Tyler, what the hell have you done? Tyler tried his usual performance. Teary eyes, trembling voice. Dad, I can explain. I was trying to protect the family. Eric was getting involved with dangerous people. I had to step in before. Enough, Aunt Linda said, her voice sharp as glass. It's over. We're not covering up his mistakes anymore. The transformation in Linda was visceral. For years, she had defended Tyler from every consequence, made excuses for every transgression. But seeing irrefutable evidence that he had deliberately framed a family member broke something fundamental in her identity as a protective mother. Officer Martinez stood up. Tyler Mitchell, you're under arrest for planting evidence, false accusation, and possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. As they handcuffed Tyler, he looked at me with a mixture of hatred and despair. Eric, you don't understand. I was trying to help you. You've always been the problem in this family. No, I replied calmly. I've always been the scapegoat. There's a difference. The prosecutor addressed my uncles. You will also face charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. Your initial statement supporting Tyler, knowing that he had planted the drugs, constitutes serious crimes. Mark and Linda looked at each other, realizing that their carefully constructed world was collapsing. For years, they had protected Tyler from consequences, creating a family system where he could do anything without real repercussions. Now they would all face the legal consequences of decades of complicity. 3 weeks later, Tyler was sentenced to 2 years in juvenile prison, followed by 3 years of probation. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda received 6 months in prison and 2,000 hours of community service. They lost their professional licenses, he as a lawyer, she as a certified public accountant. But the social fallout was more devastating than the legal penalties. The story spread quickly through the community. The golden boy everyone admired was revealed as a manipulative criminal who framed his own cousin. The respected family that covered up crimes to protect appearances. I moved in with my paternal grandfather, an 82-year-old man who had always questioned my uncle's obvious favoritism. I always knew something was wrong in that house, he told me as he helped me organize my new room. Real families don't sacrifice one member to protect another. I returned to Roosevelt High as an unexpected hero. The story of how I exposed my own cousin became urban legend among the students. Not because of dramatic revenge, but because of smart use of evidence and meticulous planning. I learned that real justice doesn't come from emotional outbursts, but from careful documentation and strategic patience. My relationship with technology deepened during the process. What started as defensive paranoia evolved into a genuine interest in digital security and forensic investigation. I decided to study computer science with a focus on cybersecurity. 6 months later, I received a letter from Tyler in juvenile detention. 3 pages of apologies, explanations about peer pressure and drug debts, pleas for forgiveness. It ended with, "I hope we can rebuild our family relationship when I get out." I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Forgiveness does not mean amnesia. And true family is not defined by blood ties, but by mutual loyalty and genuine respect. My grandfather and I developed a quiet routine. Breakfast together, conversations about history, gardening projects on weekends. He taught me that real strength does not come from dominating others, but from building a life based on personal integrity. A year later, Tyler was released for good behavior. I hear he moved to another state, trying to start over far from the reputation he built here. Uncle Mark and Aunt Linda sold the house, got divorced, each trying to rebuild their individual lives away from the toxic system they created together. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty for destroying my adoptive family. The answer is simple: I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed what was already corrupt. Systems based on lies and favoritism eventually collapse. I just sped up the inevitable process. The most valuable lesson I learned is that victims don't have to accept the role of scapegoat to maintain false family peace. Sometimes exposing the truth is the most loving thing you can do, not just for yourself, but to force others to confront destructive behavior. Tyler tried to use our family relationship as a shield for criminal behavior. He discovered that blood ties do not grant moral immunity, and that underestimating the person you are trying to destroy can be a fatal mistake. If this story of justice and personal transformation has touched you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more stories of people who refused to accept the role of victim and took control of their own narratives. Today, at 21, I work at a cybersecurity company helping others protect their personal information. I live with my grandfather in a house full of plants, books, and honest conversations. Tyler may have tried to plant evidence in my backpack, but what he really planted was the seed of my true strength. And that seed grew into something he could never destroy: the ability to turn betrayal into wisdom, injustice into purpose, and victimization into total empowerment.